what we saw last year in 2013 was a Washington that did not deliver for the American people. And the president sees this as a year of action, to work with Congress where he can and to bypass Congress where necessary to lift folks who want to come up into the middle class.
Yeah, that was White House Press Secretary Jay Carney during an interview on ABC's This Week. He's talking about the president's use of executive power. I heard that. Did you hear that correctly? To bypass Congress where necessary sounds to me like a threat. I think President Obama is trying to bestow limitless executive powers unto himself. We've talked about this time and time again on this program. How the president, we have no idea, but how does the president plan to act alone if Congress doesn't agree with him? Our founding fathers didn't establish an American government to perform this way. It's supposed to be based on a system of checks and balances. But who's doing the checking here? It doesn't seem like any action is being taken to stop the president or call him out for his wrongdoings. I mean, I remember when President George W. Bush was in office, I mean, we heard he was shredding the Constitution. They were giving him so much flack about it. For example, in terms of the Iraq War, well, whether you agreed or disagreed with the Iraq War, he got a vote in Congress. That's how it's done. Then he's the commander-in-chief. Tomorrow night, we'll hear the president's annual State of the Union address, and I really don't think he's going to say anything about respecting the limits on his authority and respecting the checks and balances provided by Congress. Well, here to discuss the constitutional overreach is Shane Krauser. He's the director at the American Academy for Constitutional Education. I read George Washington's first inaugural, and he was pretty clear about the role of president, that Congress was supposed to present him with an agenda and legislation, and he can make suggestions from time to time. This president seems to think the executive branch is superior to Congress.
That's exactly right. This man is a tyrant. He is an individual that told us back in 2001 that this Constitution is deeply flawed. He's told us that during the time that since he's been president, that he will bypass Congress if necessary. And he just told us 2 weeks ago that he has a pen and paper and he's prepared to use those things if necessary to act unilaterally. The only thing about this Constitution, from his perspective, I believe, that is deeply flawed is the fact that he cannot act unilaterally. It's time for the American people to rise up. It's time for Congress to embrace the intestinal fortitude that's necessary to call him out on what he's doing. He's disregarding the rule of law. He's disregarded the Constitution, and he has an agenda that he's going to accomplish one way or another.
Aren't we supposed to say that no president, doesn't matter if we like his agenda or don't like his agenda, if he's a member of our party, not a member of our party, the process is supposed to be superior. Article 2 is supposed to be superior. The Congress is supposed to have legislative authority, not the president. And this idea, because they won't get something done, somehow empowers him. That is not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution, that a president is empowered when he doesn't get his way with Congress.
That's exactly right. Article 1 outlines the legislative branch's enumerated powers. Article 2 outlines what it is that the executive is permitted to do. And I found nothing inside Article 2 that allows the president to do what he's saying he's going to do. And we need a legislature that's going to stand up and say something and do something and respond to what it is that he is trying to act out on, namely these tyrannical impulses, and tell him enough is enough. Right now, we don't have too many members of Congress that are calling him out and upholding their oath. Part of the oath of Congress is, as they go about enforcing and upholding the Constitution, is to ensure that other branches of government don't act outside of their parameters. They're simply not doing it.
You know, do you think it's because we use the word tyranny, but really, I mean, nobody's being rounded up and put in education camps. Soldiers aren't storming into electronic stores to seize refrigerators in the name of the people. That really most of us think of tyranny as something violent.
I think you're right there. We live in a culture that is all about what's in it for me right now. And President Obama has been able to persuade enough people in this country to buy off on his agenda, even if it means disregarding the rule of law. And I think when people begin to understand that it can go both ways, what happens when a Republican wins the office, and he begins sticking it to those people. The beauty of America and the beauty of our Constitution is it's about the rule of law. It's a constitutional republic that ensures that all people are protected, not just those people that you disagree with, not just those people that you do agree with. It's designed to protect everyone. And when we begin to perceive tyranny as just acting out in a violent manner, I think that's when you know that our constitutional republic is in danger. We have to stand up and recognize that when the rule of law is not abided by, we're all in trouble.
Boehner and McConnell don't really seem to care. And when guys like Cruz or Paul or Lee stand up and say, wait a second, there's a process here, they get shouted down as the wacko birds. And even Ted Cruz said he wouldn't want a Republican president to have these powers. We're supposed to not want a unilateral executive.
Well, outside of the Ted Cruzes and the Rand Pauls and the Mike Lees of the world, I think that our frustration revolves around the idea that these people don't even understand what they can do. I hate to put it that way, but we are a culture that doesn't understand what the rule of law is. We're a culture that doesn't understand the parameters of authority found in the Constitution. So it should be no surprise that we in turn elect individuals that don't understand their parameters of authority. I've been out to Washington, D.C. I've met with members of Congress, and it is bizarre to hear some of the things that these people say with respect to them not acting out against a rogue executive or a judiciary that is not doing things and deciding things in accordance with the rule of law. These people don't, to a large degree, understand the ammunition that they have available to them to go out and counter executive orders, to counter what this president is doing, to counter what the various courts are doing as well. Once they understand those things, I think we start to make progress, but we, the people, have to wake up and we have to demand that they act in certain ways. Until we do that, we're just involved in a vicious cycle.
It's funny, in hindsight's obviously 2020, and looking back, there were a lot of things that George W. Bush probably shouldn't have been doing, but, progressives staked their anti-Bush, rhetoric on the Iraq War, except the Democrats voted for it, including the 2016 presumptive nominee Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden voted for the Iraq War. So when they were saying that Bush was shredding the Constitution, well, he's the commander-in-chief. You voted for the action. That's how the powers work.
That's exactly right. The War Powers Act of 1973, which is what individuals were all up in arms about, is something that the president utilized at the time to move forward with military action. I will tell you that the War Powers Act of 1973 is unconstitutional, but there's a difference between an individual having a disagreement as to the constitutionality of a piece of legislation and an individual who disregards the legislative process altogether. That's the difference here. President Bush believed that he was exercising his powers in accordance with the rule of law, in accordance with the Constitution. Here you have an individual in President Obama who does not even care one whit about the process that he must go through in order to enact any particular law, and he's told us that. If Congress won't work with us, I've got a pen and a phone, and I'll move forward to accomplish what I need to accomplish.
All right, thanks for joining me on the program. Can't wait to see the State of the
Thank
Union
you.
tomorrow night. Now, coming up, New York State teachers. Yeah, New York State teachers are turning on Common Core. Wow. We're going to get into that next.